Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And thanks to be here with us participating to this webinar. Again, this is one of the many webinars we are as GMI offering and giving. We are touching several topics. Today, the topic is a specific topic relevant to functional safety. And yeah, the title is Proven in Use versus Prior Use. This is very specific, and we have really a great chance to talk about this topic with Tino. Tino is one of the most expert, at least the most knowledgeable person in terms of functional safety. And okay, this is just few raw about us. Tino is I am Mauro Perego, and I am sales director at GMI. And Tino is our director for functional safety topics as well. Very soon we will talk later. We will introduce also a few words about the fact that we will also be able to be more, we are prepared to deal with not only with functional safety, but also with security topics, which is also part of functional safety. But we will talk later. Even a lot of people I recognize as participants to our previous webinar, I would like to introduce a few words, to spend a few words about GMI. Before to do that, I want to say during this webinar, you have the chance to send us questions. We have a box here, and we will provide answer during the webinar itself. And we have also a final section with question and answer, because we collected some questions during the registration. Some of you provided us some question, and we will provide you answer on that. And you will also have the chance to have a look to this presentation, because we are going to send you the presentation, the PDF file of this presentation, as well as if you miss something, or if you intend to have a look to one of our previous webinar, we as GMI have a YouTube page, and you can find all the video. We are recording this presentation, and we recorded also all the other webinars, so you have the chance to go through the webinars from our YouTube page. What else before to start? Maybe something will come up later. Let's spend a few words about GMI. So GMI is a manufacturer of field interface devices, like barrier, like safety relays, which are in almost all automation package. So you can find the GMI in DCS package, ESD, fire and gas, PMS, and so on and so on. In the chemical, petrochemical, in the oil and gas industry, as well in the food industry, as well as in the pharmaceutical. GMI has 40-year experience, and is an Italian company. We do everything here in Italy, but of course we export our products worldwide, and we have offices, branches, or partnership with local distributor agents and so on. I'm trying to go to the next page, and I have some difficulties. Okay, so as said, we deal with safety, either functional safety or intrinsic safety, and of course, dealing with safety, the quality of our product is one of the most important thing. And that's why while we produce everything here in Italy, also we test everything before the goods are quitting from the factory itself. So this is just a page representing the shortly our production. So we are dealing with barrier, we have a safety relay up to seal 3, isolator, we have power supply systems, dealing with functional safety because our power supply are suitable for application up to seal 3, can be installed in classified in hazardous area location. We have multiplexer system which can be installed up to zone 1. We have termination board which are customized for several kind of system, DCS, ESD system. We have hard multiplexer as well, surge protector and loop indicators. And as mentioned, we have a dedicated department providing consultancies, providing training on EX topic, on seal topics, and very soon also on security topics. The department will be extended to cover also security aspect. And we will have training on that and in the next future also webinar on security topics. Don't want to spoil too much time, and I want to leave and to go inside our discussion, and I will leave soon the speech to Tino. As said, we are present worldwide. We have office location almost all over the world, so we are present everywhere. And this is just a short list of our typical customers, ranging from system vendor to EPC contractor to OEM and end users. That's all. I think if I miss something, you can add on top, Tino. I would leave the speech to you now, and we will enter into these in very, very interesting, but even detailed topics, which is the proven in use or the prior use. I will.
Okay. Thank you, Mauro.
Because I'm also interested in learning from this webinar.
Okay. Thank you, Mauro, and thank you, GMI, for giving us another opportunity to connect and broadcast some general topics. Like Mauro was saying, everything is recorded, will be on YouTube channel from GMI. The Q&A boxes for people who cannot wait to add some extra questions can try to fill them in the questions, and Mauro will monitor and I will monitor, and if possible, I will answer either live or we have to answer it delayed. We also collected already some questions per registrations, where I picked, of course, the most interesting ones. There were like 6 or 7 questions, all in the similar range of saying, what is the difference between proven use and prior use? Well, that is a topic for today, so I will not handle that in the Q&A session. I will do this here. We will do, I think we have 3 polls during this session, just to find out if people are still alerting or if they are still following us. So we would appreciate if you then could just click on the poll questions A, B, C, D, and there will only be one answer on the questions will be the most correct and the most complete. With having said all that, it's time to start. So let us jump into some history and go back to 1998. That's the release 1 or edition 1. That's the first bullet of the IEC 61508, which is indeed the functional safety for EEPES, means electrical, electronical, programmable, electronical safety related systems, which is mainly to be used by the manufacturers of equipment. In 1998 was no mentioning about proven in use. That word did not exist, was not a standard. They, at that time in 1998, had only one way to predict the reliability on the equipment. It was a theoretical approach, doing an FMEDA, looking at failure rates, coming to safe failure fraction, coming to sub-definitions, which is now today still used in edition 2 of the 61508, which is called Road 18. That's what we wrote here in the first bullet. Second bullet is there was a release of the IEC 61511, which is indeed the functional safety standard for the application specific called process industry. When you want to build, maintain and operate a SIS, stands for Safety Instrumented System. And they introduced in 2003 a definition which was called prior use. But prior use in the first edition in the 61511 standard was being referred to as proven in use. So very, very confusing, but I will try to do my best today to try to highlight a few differences between those two topics. Then the 61508, third bullet, came out in second edition 2010, and they introduced two different topics. They introduced something called Road 28, and Road 28 for the manufacturers was called the proven in use, which is still the one today, which is, let's say, very often used when they claim reliability figures on their equipment. So the proven in use Road 28 was born in 2010 by the second edition release of the 61508. But they also maintained the first edition one approach, which was then called, and is still called today, Road 18. And last but not least, today's topic, as we are already in 2021, so those standards are also evolving. We had in 2016/17, we had the edition 2 out of the 61511, the specific application standard for the process industry. And they are preferring to use Road 28, which is based on the Road 28 coming from the 61508. However, for the 61511, they clearly claim Road 28 as prior use, which is supposed to be the valid data, quality data coming from the end user / operating companies. They also have an alternative, which I will show in this webinar later on with some slides. They also have proven in use. So you can still use proven in use coming from the 61508 from the manufacturers, or you as an end user can have your own prior use. So let's have a look on some of those definitions, just to be very clear. As Mauro was saying, you will get either this in PDF already in an electronic form sent to you by email, or you will also be able to listen again and see this again on the recorded version. And I think typically GMI is putting them online like in the next 24 hours, latest by beginning of next week. So proven in use on 61508 did not exist in 1998 in edition 1. It only came into life into the edition 2 of the 61508, which was 2010 April release. That's what we say over here. And for those who are really wants to be very precise, I'm giving you here the reference number where you can see in section number 4, which is a normative section of the 61508. If you go to paragraph 3.8.18, there they say proven in use for the end users, for the manufacturers, for the manufacturers, it is a demonstration based on an analysis of operational experience for a specific configuration of an element, that the likelihood of a dangerous systematic fault is low enough so that every safety function that uses the element achieves its required safety integrity level. I'm pretty sure if you read this a couple of times, you will have different ideas on how or what the manufacturer is supposed to prove to you, but I will also help you with that. I got some bullet lists which I have summarized. Jumping to the 61511, which is the process industry standard. Edition 1 was out in 2003, and they introduced, as I said before, prior use, but the reference was giving in the abbreviation paragraph 3, they were giving the abbreviation as proven in use. And proven in use was called in edition 1 when a documented assessment has shown that there is appropriate evidence based on the previous use of the component, that component or the component is suitable for use in a safety instrumented system. And you can already see how many debates and discussions and subjectivity comes on what is now appropriate, what is now previous use in terms of hours, in quantity, in quality, in confidence factors. So all that has been, let's say, rewritten in a more stricter way in edition 2 of the standard, which is now the last bullet, which is a 2016 edition 2 of the 61511. And they say a documented assessment by the user that a device is suitable, and again, you can question yourself what is suitable, for use in an SIS and can meet the required functional safety and safety integrity requirements based on previous operating experience in similar operating environments. So here they start to already make the foundation to say, listen, it has to be experience in similar operating environments of your applications, not somewhere from a generic database that you may have purchased on internet. Let's dive back into the 61508, and we go here in part number 2, and part number 2 is known as the hardware section, normative section of the IEC 61508. And we came up in the standard edition 2, they came up with two roads, road 1H and road 2H, which is going to be important later on here in this webinar to understand the difference. And I will start with, sure.
Excuse me, Tino, we forgot the beginning of the webinar to give me the right to, for example, to launch the poll. You should.
Okay, but you should have the rights to launch the poll or not?
Yes, I should, if you give me that right.
Because the poll is coming up in 2 slides.
Yeah, but I have no chance even later to do that. Anyway, or you do that?
I could try if I know how to do it. May sounds a bit blunt now. I never really organized. So why is it that you cannot launch the poll sections? Because usually they are prepared in the webinar. Because
I have not the host right. Normally you give me the host right in the beginning. Sorry to all.
That's okay. That's maybe here you go. You are now the co-host. Bingo. Probably yes. my mistake. We have done too many. No
problem. We forgot.
Used to it. But okay. Not a
Sorry
problem.
to interrupt.
That's okay. So we're coming back on the 61508 edition 2, part 2, normative section. And here I have also the reference 7.4.4. That's the exact reference in section 2 of the standard. There are 2 roads they are describing. One is road 1H, and that is the easy one to explain. Road 1H is based on the 1998 edition 1 standard, which is like the theoretical approach of the equipment, where they will be basing on the safe failure fraction. That means based on the integrity of the safety inside the system itself or the built-in diagnostics, and based on the safe failure fraction ratio of the overall failure, they will look on how many HFT, how many hardware fault tolerance, for those who do not know what hardware fault tolerance means, in a simple explanation, meaning that how many dangerous faults can your equipment architecture tolerate and still achieve your safety function. That is the HFT that the standard is focusing on. So road 1H is based on HFT and on the safe failure fraction concepts, which is known in industry as table 2 and table 3 from the 61508, or for the specialized, for the specialist here in this webinar, it's known as type A and type B equipment from the manufacturer. What was new by the edition 2 of the standard 61508 is road 2H, and there they say you can base it on components reliability data feedback from end users. So that means that the manufacturers have to collect failure data coming back from end users. They also need to prove increased confidence level. We see this later on. This will be 90% confidence level. And also they have to achieve a specific hardware fault tolerance for specific safety integrity level. That is road 2H based on the 61508. We have one more slide, which is the one before we can launch our first poll. Now I'm going to explain you what is the edition 2 of the 61511 requiring or proposing. The preference very clearly from the 61511 committee is to not use the safe failure fraction, which was defined by road 1H from the manufacturers or by an investigation by a specialized or by an accreditation office. So the 61511 is trying to push the end users / operating companies to collect a quality failure data of their own equipment, and they prefer to go here for the for the third bullet, which is the one here, so number 3, and I have here an asterisk, and the asterisk means I have given you 3 options here as the standard is proposing them to you, but the standard doesn't call a method 1, 2, or 3. This is purely myself, that's a personal definition. I call this in my training courses always method 1, method 2, and method 3. And the addition to of the 6.15.11, which again is the application standard, specific standard for the process industry when you want to apply functional safety on a safety instrumented system. The addition to prefers not to use the safe failure fraction and HFT per subsystem, which will be here explained in method number 1 later on in the slides. So they do not prefer to use that. They actually ask you to go as a preference to method number 3, which I first will read over here. So method number 3 is a quality failure feedback data coming from the end user's own equipment, own experience, own proof test coverage, own proof test consistency, etc., etc. So in other words, it's quality data from your own field installation. Of course, if this is a new plant that has not been built yet, you don't have any feedback from the same installation that you can use. So therefore, there are a few alternatives. The other alternative is method number 2. And method number 2 is you are allowed to comply to the 6.15.11 by actually going for method number 2, which is then quality failure feedback data, which the manufacturers will have to collect for similar environment, similar applications as the one you want to claim your road to H or your method number 2 from. Both method number 2 and method number 3 are both known as quality feedback data, either your own, which is method number 3, or the one coming from the manufacturer. And if both method number 2 and 3 are not available, there's only one option left. And it's like in 1998, edition 1 of the 6.15.08. This is called the safe failure fraction and the hardware fault tolerance, which is still today known as road 1H. And by this, we can launch the first poll question, which Mauro hopefully will be able to launch now.
It should be launched.
Okay, and now
can you see that
for everyone, so everyone can listen to the question. So the architectural constraint as per 6.15.11 standard today means edition 2. And remember, only one answer here is the most complete and the most correct answer. And I've given you A, B, C, or D. So it's almost like a multiple choice question of your exam on the training course. Can use either method 1 or method 2 or method 3, but only one method per safety instrumented function. B, can use method 2 and method 3, both based on road to H mixed per SIF. C, can use only road 1H when claiming prior use for the IEC 6.15.11. And D, can mix per SIF method 1, 2, or method 3 per SIF, all as applicable. That is the answers you could click. And I would encourage everyone, it's not costing money, you will not lose face, you cannot win or lose anything. It's just for us a bit of a game to see if you are still awake and not falling asleep already for those who are in the evening region zones as we are. So
now let's wait again a few seconds. Okay, I think we can stop here right now. We had a very good response in terms of quantity. Okay, let's stop here. Thanks for the many answer, and let me share the result.
So the poll is closed. You can see here the results. You can see that the majority took answer A. Can use either method 1 or method 2 or method 3, but only one method per safety instrument function. And despite the fact that the majority has picked that answer, the bad news is that is certainly not correct. And I'm going to highlight this in the next coming slides. So it's almost impossible to stay only with method 1 or only with method 3 or only with method 2 or vice versa. Simple reason is you will not find instrumentation that will comply all to one of those methods, solely to those methods. So you can use method 2 and 3, which is answer B, based on road that should have been road to H, but that is mixed per sieve. Well, that's also not 100% correct. Of course, you can mix road to H, sorry, road method 2 or method 3, which is road to H, both on prior use and proven use. This is correct. However, the most correct answer here was the last one, because the third one was totally nonsense. For those who select that, it's the minority. I'm glad to say that. Can only use road 1H when claiming prior use. When you claim prior use, you cannot use road 1H because road 1H is a theoretical approach, has nothing to do with prior use. Prior use is that method 3 is road to H. That was just to trick some of the answers, as we typically do also during the exams. Now, the last one here, can mix per sieve method 1, 2, 3, all as applicable. Well, that is basically what it mainly is. If you look at all your safety PLCs, platforms, interlock system that you are using, the majority are all using typically road 1H. And then some of your sensors, some of your field instruments will have a mix of road 1H, maybe with road 1H and road 2H on one, let's say, device or one system. And I'm pretty sure that all of you are also struggling with your final elements, where you will combine and maybe an actuator with a positioner and maybe a valve, etc. And all of a sudden you will end up with some, let's say, subsystem with 3 or 4 different parts in there, where maybe only 2 of them have maybe road 2H, one has road 1H, and one has nothing. So there all of a sudden you will have to find a solution. So it is a struggle. It is clearly a struggle. And that is also the purpose of why we have given this webinar, to try to give you a little bit of guidance, and hopefully we will be successful in that. Okay, I'll stop sharing and I'll have to continue as I'm eating up my time, because I typically talk too much as usual. But I will try to do my best to summarize as good as possible. So I think this slide here, certainly for those, I saw a few names who came to some of the training courses. Anyone that came out of my training courses will recognize this slide, because this is like the key slides which we are giving on hardware safety, integrity, architectural constraint. What is architectural constraint? As the word is saying, how many elements, how many devices do I need in able to achieve a certain SIL level? And let us first focus here on the right-hand side on method number 3. That is your preference if you want to comply to the 6.15.11. And preference is prior use. It's going to be end user feedback, and I'm going to give you guidance on report 4 coming from the ISA, that's 2015, or the Namur NE 130 guideline, which I will show you some copy from, or at least the front page. It's only applicable when you have full variable language or limited variable language with diagnostic coverage inside more than 60%, which is easy because all the elements with a diagnostic coverage will have more than 60%. Otherwise, they most likely will not be belonging into the safety environment. Reliability data confidence of more than 70%, that's a real struggle because end users typically have no good quality data. And performance evidence of similar operating environments could be becoming a challenge, and I will explain you a few examples later on. Now, if method 3 is not applicable, you can go alternatively to method number 2 and ask the manufacturer to give you some advice, and maybe the manufacturer has some feedback from similar application environments with some confidence, which will be here 90%. There it was 70%. Method number 2 will be 90%. I've got another slide coming up for that. And of course, the evaluations additionally can be a mix on some road 1H evaluation together with road 2H. And the road 2H here will be an expert judgment that some third party typically will make an expert judgment to say for what type of seal you can use it. The good news is both method 3 and method 2 are using a simplified table 6. I call this table 6. That is coming from part 1 from the 6.15.11 and up to SIL 2. You are allowed to build a loop with a single instrument, single interlock, single final element. That means a one-of-one loop because the requirement is of a HFT equal to 0. So there is no redundancy required for a SIL2 low demand. But there is a requirement if you would go to a high demand. A high demand will mean the number of demands expected that your safety loop will be triggered by your interlock. And a high demand means it's more than once per year. Maximum once per year is a low demand. For a SIL1, we don't care how often you will have a demand. It's HFT 0. And if you would ever go to a SIL3, no matter what demand mode you have, there also the HFT is 1. Coming back to the 1998 edition 61508 Road 1H explanation, there is FMEA, safe failure fraction, systematic capability, type A, type B, and safety manual, normative required. What is not normative required is a certificate and a report. And of course, you need to predict the PFD and or the PFH per your subsystem. Then you had this table 2 and 3 type A and B. And here the safe failure fraction, the left column, the higher the safe failure fraction, the higher the HFT will be for the lower SFF. The higher the SFF, the lower the HFT for the higher SIL. That is how we read this table. Okay, I was trying to give you a summarized overview here with this table. I did work it out more in depth, but as we are running, as always, a little bit into time trouble, I will try to focus on a few slides. So this one I will skip because I have just explained it very briefly in the previous slide. That is here the reference that you can then also check again for method 3. Where are the reference in the standard recommending you on how to collect and what to collect for failure data? But that is a slide where I want to give you a little bit more of a highlight. So more than 70%, if you do have your own data, you need to have a confidence, statistical upper bound, statistical confidence limit of no less than 70%. So in other words, more than 70%. You need to prove a certain volume of operating experience. And of course, the question is, what is a volume? And there will be some other guidelines which I will be using. I think I have added in the Q&A section some example for that. Increase confidence level with evidence demonstration of performance of devices in similar operating environments. What you, for instance, cannot claim, you cannot claim prior use and actually take a database from a commercial database, from a accreditation, let's say, company, office, etc., or maybe that you buy from internet and then also claim that is your data. That is not the intention of the standard. Consideration of the manufacturer's quality management and configuration management systems, adequate identification or specification of devices per device, for instance, including, as an example, the firmware. I give a very brief example. Typically, the end user, they have lots of smart and hard transmitters, but they do not keep a necessarily track of what firmware today is controlling the safety function, which could be a problem if you want to go to the prior use functionality evidence. Method number 2, proven use. That is the challenge for the manufacturers. How do they collect the data if they do retrieve the data? And they are been giving guidance in the standard by the IEC 60303-2, which is here this standard. It's an international standard on how application guide to collect dependable data from the field. And they also have a second standard, which is petroleum and natural gas industry standard specific, called ISO. We call this the 14224. In those two standards, the manufacturers are told on how to collect data, which is here bullet number B, or the second bullet, which is called B. A, based on field feedback from elements used in similar application and environments, and, so there's an and function here. So the first bullet and the second bullet, collecting your data, quality data, and evaluating that data to the amount of field feedback and the exercise of an expert judgment, and where needed, the undertaking of specific tests. So when all A, B, C, D can be proven as an evidence to the accreditation expert judgment, the manufacturer may be able to claim, based on proven in use, a certain SIL integrity on their equipment. But you will still need from the manufacturer a certain data uncertainty, let's say a reliability expression on how reliable that equipment is. And they will have to get confidence greater than 90% on their equipment. Then all type B elements, which are the table 3 elements, shall have a minimum diagnostic coverage of more than 60%, which I said that is typically easy. And Road to H proven use for the manufacturers is only supposed to use for simple devices and functionalities. I can say it's very often used today. Okay, Mauro, we have the second poll.
Yes, I launched the second poll. So,
okay, which is specific for manufacturers. And I want to trigger that because this is for the manufacturer itself on the 650LN. Sorry, Mauro, to stop you because you were still saying something.
No. It's okay.
Okay, so as per 61508 2010 manufacturer device system certificate and test report. So the question is here about the certificate and test report. Again, only one answer we are expecting is the most complete and the most correct. So the test report and certificate can be based on either road 1H or road 2H, but only one road selection per device and or system. It's a bit similar to what we asked before for the 61511, but now the specific for end users here who buy equipment and getting a certificate report or a evidence from the manufacturer. So this is to trigger your mind on this, can be based only, that's B, per road 1H as per safe failure fraction HFT definition. C can be based only as per road to H, or D can be based on either road 1H or road to H individually or mixed. So which one do you think is here the most complete and the most correct answer? Okay, I would say appreciate if you would try to click. I see that in the meantime, there is one person raising a hand. We don't stop to raise the hand, so you could actually fill in it into the Q&A box in the question and answer. So whoever raised the hand, please actually type it into the Q&A, and then we may be able to get back to you.
Okay. In the meantime, if you agree, I can close the poll and I will share the result.
At the moment you said we're going to end the poll, the bottom one, which is the correct answer, by the way, the bottom one had the majority. But the moment you said we're going to end the poll, there was one answer coming in again on the top one. So it's like almost 50-50% here in question answer 1, B, A, to answer D, which is the last one. So the first question, the first answer, sorry, is not correct, A, for the reason that can be based on either road 1H or road 2H, but only one road selection per device and or system. That is a very common mistake interpretation from people also attending training courses or other webinars. People think it's either 1 or 2, it's either road 1 or road 2H. And I have to, let's say, I have to admit that in the beginning of the 61508 edition 2, 2010, the first year, I also was of the impression that it should be either road 1H or road 2H, but let's say the history has learned us or told us that many manufacturers today are mixing that. I give you a very quick example. I know a smart or a hard transmitter vendor where they have done the FMEDA on their, let's say, hardware of their transmitter, and they have achieved based on road 2H, which is mainly based on their firmware quality. They have achieved on road 2H a certain integrity on their, let's say, definition of safety around their firmware safety functionality. Together with the investigation, which was based on the road 1H, they combined those two, and that is what you will see more and more. That is my own experience. You will see this more and more coming up on certificates. So that is why the bottom one is the most correct one. All right, Mauro, let's stop this and let's continue. And that is the table A and B, table 2 and 3, coming from the 1998 edition 1. So again, I will not spend too much time other than safe failure fraction on the left hand. That is why the safe failure fraction here is, to be honest, has been criticized in the edition 2 of the 61511, which I fully agree, by the way, in the meantime, of course, because the safe failure fraction has been manipulated by some, let's say, creativity of engineers in terms of trying to get the safe failure fraction as high as possible, because then they could have a single device for a very high SIL. And of course, the committee of the 61511 has also recognized that. That is why, let's say, we lost a little bit of the credibility for some of those manufacturers on the safe failure fraction. And the safe failure fraction is supposed to be for every single element per subsystem separately. So you cannot add them up. You cannot say, let me buy a smart positioner on an assembly of a valve, and all of a sudden the whole valve assembly, the whole safety function will become a very nice safety, let's say, integrity for that assembly safety function. That is not supposed to be going the way I just explained you. Then, if applicable, the diagnostic coverage, of course, if there is diagnostic coverage in a element, systematic safety integrity or safety capability, which no doubt you may have seen already on your certificates or on some reports, is of course one of the key issues for this method number 1. As an example, if you would have an element with an SC2, the maximum SIL, simply speaking, will be only SIL2. If you would add two SIL2s, SC2 together and claiming SIL3, not sure this could be correct, because we have to look into the safety capability of those individual two devices, and we have to check, can you go into a SIL3 or not. And then safety manual per device, including the proof test coverage, where the proof test coverage, of course, will be very important. And the safety manual, by the way, is a normative requirement. That is, of course, very important to collect when you are going for method number 1 element or devices.
Excuse me, Tino.
I give you some of the challenges. Yes, Mauro, you had a question?
Yeah, so we have 2 questions, but one, it was related to the previous poll. I think it was answered in somehow.
Yeah, I think the first question, I can quickly give it to everyone. So the question was from a participant, there are mixing H1 and H2, but is it correct? And the answer is yes, it is correct. Of course, we need to do some, let's say, investigation on how they mix it, on what it is based. It still have to be based, the road to ACE have to be based on quality investigation. And the same for road 1H, we have to see how did they come to their test, let's say, results when they do the theoretical approach on the safety integrity of that element based on test records. What were the assumptions? What were the test conditions? That's something that I always would like to see. So both, if this road to H or road 1H doesn't matter for me, I want to see where does the judgment come from based on what test conditions. Then the same person asked, does SC4 exist? In theory, it could exist, but I have not seen many evidence in the field. Right, then I got a third person or a second person coming in with a third question saying SFF would never apply if it applies to each component individually, right? Question mark. Let me see if I understand this correctly. SFF would never apply if it applies to each component individually, correct? All right. Yes, this is correct. It is specific for the safety integrity of one, let's call it a component, let's call it for one subsystem. So a subsystem, what do I treat as a subsystem? If I treat a field transmitter, so there you have the electronics and the firmware inside and your measuring cell as one, let's say, safety transmitter, I call this one subsystem. The safe failure fraction is applicable for the functionality of that subsystem. So a valve cannot have a safe failure fraction since it cannot take itself to a safe state without an actuation. That's a very good statement from this person, which I also recognize the name. So welcome back in the webinars. Right, then I got another question. Like usual, can you send me a certificate for this webinar, please? Of course, yeah. GMI is a generous company. They sent this all out free of charge. So whatever you will do with this webinar certificate, but yes, you will get one.
Yeah, then, sorry, Tino. Everybody will get one, provided that participated to more than 75% of the webinar. This is the condition.
So if you quit and leave the webinar now, you probably will not get it yet. So you have to stay online for a few more minutes. And then the last question was, and then I have to continue, otherwise, because my timer is ticking here. During the product lifecycle, units are always upgraded. Does the software update would be impact to prior use data? What do you think? If you take a smartphone and you put a new firmware in there, it's still your own smartphone. I'm pretty sure your functionality will change. Would you have to prove this as prior use if the functionality would have an impact to your safety function? My answer is 101%. Of course, you will have to prove that. So that should be answered with that also. If yes, should one use the data? If yes, with what constraints? Well, that, of course, I cannot answer on a live webinar, but I'm pretty sure that some specialist experts can give you more detail on that. All right, Maro, let me jump back. Let's close it also. Prior use, proven use. Those are the two, let's say, camps now. Left camp is prior use, right camp is here proven use. Now, the dark text, which is gray text here, because the text was coming out of my training course, I changed a little bit, I tweaked a bit of the text here. The red text is my personal interpretation, what could be a challenge for you. Let's first start with prior use. The standard is asking based on practical, real end user feedback, evidence in similar operating environments. Unfortunately, based on my personal experience, majority of all the end users have almost no own quality feather data. They have some, but we are far away that an end user has been collecting data for many years. They are being told now by edition 2, 2016, to collect quality data. We are now 2021. We are now nearly 5 years later. Be honest and think about yourself if you are an end user listening into this webinar. Have you started to collect your own data? Do you have time for that? Do you have, let's say, the know-how for that? Or do you have budget for this? And if yes, how much have you been collecting in the last 5 years? Guidance have been given in the standard to the report 4 and also to the NAMUR 130. You have to achieve a confidence of 70% or more, minimum 70 or more. And how many of you as end users have an ID today, have a record today, what firmware is inside? That was basically also the Q&A coming in from this one person. If you upgrade the firmware, what will be the impact on your confidence proven data for prior use that you need to prove? Think about that. Go back in proven use on the right-hand side. How many of you end users are sending back equipment when the equipment is no longer in warranty? How many of you are giving data feedback to your manufacturers? I cannot bitch or complain about the quality data from the manufacturers if the end users are not sending it back. So what I'm saying here, the red one challenges the majority of manufacturers receive almost no valuable feedback. I give you a very clear example. I have a solenoid, let's say, vendor in mind on a project. He sold 11 plus solenoids worldwide. Return failure 1. Now, if you think about that, what is the contribution of one return failure of one solenoid, which was mostly the one solenoid which was still in warranty, therefore it was sent back on the cost of the vendor, and therefore they may have some idea what was maybe the potential failure, but that's something that you have to think about. So let us move forward and conclude or finish with the webinar. Some recommendations that I could give mainly for the end users and mainly for the operating companies, which was the main target group here for this webinar. Start collecting your data today. Means don't wait for another 5 years, because then for sure you will never get your own feather data. Follow the recommended guidelines, and I can tell you there are more guidelines than we already showed you by the standard, and one of them is coming up, which was specific for some, let's say, end users which are in the United Kingdom. So this is coming from the Chemical Downstream and Oil Industry Forum, which is called the CDOIF, but I have a slide coming up on the Q&A for that. So there are some more, let's say, help in the industry coming free of charge on how to collect this prior use data. Second bullet, especially for end users, redefine proof test. Every time the same debate discussion. People are allowed to test during a shutdown. Then they ask me how much coverage factor can we take for that. And then I tell them a very brief and a very short story. Go in your car on the parking lot, push your brakes on the car. How many, let's say, proof test coverage for your brakes can you claim when the car is not moving? That's the same if you are doing it on a pipeline without product inside. So think about proof test coverage. Think about the intervals. How many of you keep the intervals the way they should? And how many of you can prove consistency? And consistency is a new word coming from the edition 2 of the 6.15.11. Provide, number 3, provide valuable feedback. Because I know when the, let's say, the price of a new element is not worth to be sent it back all the way back to the manufacturer and you just simply buy a new one, well, we cannot blame that the manufacturers do not have good valuable feedback if you don't tell them the feedback. The last or the second last bullet, when using Road 1H, evaluate your safety manual, read the safety manual and be critical to yourself. When you read something which you don't understand, ask for explanation, clarification from the manufacturer's experts. There may be a reason why they state certain statements on their safety manuals. When using Road to H, evaluate the fair data conditions and compare to your environment and to your application. Right, I'm going to summarize the slides. We as GMI, we can support you with services. As Mauro was saying, we have a whole range of lifecycle support services, which are going from process hazard risk analysis, LOPA, SIL determination, verification, etc., all the way to function safety management and assessment. We have also additionally, and that was the extra service that Mauro was actually mentioning before, we also are providing service to security management assessment and to supplier security management, I mean for the suppliers. What is a new topic for the 2021 under the umbrella of GMI, providing the TOV Rhineland accredited competency review training program. The good old one is the first one, good old because I'm looking to myself. I've been doing this since 2005. We have been giving so far like 187 trainings and trained 2,400 plus people with the FSN, which is the Functional Safety Engineer SIS Competency Review. We launched new cybersecurity fundamental course. Plus we also have a fast track course, which is a one-day recap course. And that's the ultimate here. We also have the security risk assessment course. All those 4 courses are being accredited under the TOV Rhineland, leading into a personal accreditation certificate on your own name. All of both courses today are a subject of passing the exam, and I can tell you that all courses are either face-to-face, classroom style, or we have 100% online, including all the exams are also online. Of course, we do customize in-house training and seminars, webinars, the one we are doing today. That's our famous yellow book, which is mainly on functional safety. And with this, I would like to give the slides back to Mauro. So I will stop this and I will also stop sharing.
Yes, before to, let me say, in the meantime, while I'm going to share the question and answer.
Okay.
There are 2 questions that you may have a look.
I got 1 question only. I see only 1, Mauro, but you maybe see 2. I see mostly data is collected centrally from different locations installed in different environment conditions, which are not the same. Does data collected and shared raise the question about data reliability? Well, there's always subjectivity in that part. Again, the subjectivity will be on the expert judgment. He or she will have to investigate what are the environment conditions, different, let's say, influences on the feedback of data. Okay, all right, Mauro.
Yeah, but there is another question that strange you don't see.
Maybe I have to collect on Q&A. No, I didn't see that one.
Okay, so can I read it for you?
Okay. So why do I not see that?
This is strange. The question is, can we blame the manufacturer if they are aware feedbacks isn't coming in, but they publish lambda of 1 fit?
Can you say again, can we blame the
manufacturer if they are aware feedback isn't coming in, but they publish lambda of 1 fit, FIT?
Well, that's very subjective to answer this. So that's kind of a, you know, I don't say a tricky question. Can you blame the manufacturer? I'm pretty sure the end users always try to blame the manufacturer, because you are buying a service, you're buying an equipment. However, you need to look at the other side also. Is the manufacturer be able to prove evidence on where this lambda or where this failure rate is coming from? And then you start a discussion. I mean, if expert A is saying, I do trust it, expert B is saying, I'm not so sure that I would trust the same. Well, there you have two subjectivities. With this, I hope I have given you a little bit of the potential way that this could go forward if you would open this to 2 or 3 different experts. Okay, Mauro, you can go ahead.
Yes, I go ahead. I think you see the blue screen, correct?
Correct.
I'm sharing. Okay, so as soon as I am able to move to the next slide, here it is. Now we have 4 questions, Tino.
Okay.
And this is the first one.
Yeah, this is the one that came from this gentleman or the engineer who is based in the United Kingdom. That is why it is referring to the BS stands for the British standard. Okay, Mauro, I remember the question.
Yes.
You can continue. You can go next.
Yeah,
slide.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since the nature of the question came from, let's say, from United Kingdom, that's why that person, engineer, was referring to BS standing for British standard. That is, for those who does not know what that means, that the BS in front of the IEC, which you can see there on the first bullet. So I first want to start because that engineer was clearly referring to one specific, let's say, item in the standard, which is 11.9.3. For those of you who are familiar with the standard part number 1, when you go to paragraph 11, that is the design and engineering of your, let's say, your hardware. And there they say in 11.9.3, the reliability data used when quantifying the effect of random failures shall be credible, shall be traceable, shall be documented, shall be justified, and shall be based on field feedback from similar devices used in similar operating environments. So there's a lot of shalls in there, and especially for a British native English speaker, I'm pretty sure you've been taught in school, you shall do this. There is no much excuse. The question is, the standard typically will always say, you shall do this. The question is, how do you do it? And if you would go to part number 2, specific, let's say part 2 of the standard, if we would go to section 2 of the standard, there is no much, let's say, clear, let's say, crystal clear guidance giving, other than there is more subjectivity again if you start to debate those. Now the help is coming not from the standard from part number 2. I think the help is coming, and I was actually, I don't say luckily, but I was pure by coincidence that in February of this month, sorry, of this year, because we are still in February, the 5th of February, so a couple of days ago, there was a new document released, and I'm giving you here the link to it, which is the link here. That's the web committee. And it's coming from the, as already mentioned, it's coming from the CODIF guidance. The CODIF guidance, that's the Chemical Downstreams and Oil Industry Forum. And they're giving you a guideline to a document prior use specific for non-programmable equipment. And if you will read that, you will see that the guidelines, without going too much in detail, but just to give you a few of the highlights, it will actually distinguish, it will differ between the systematic safety integrity with the hardware safety integrity. And it will give you a clear reference to the standard on what is the background on that, and it gives you step per step. And the nice thing on this document, which I personally really appreciate much from this forum, is they give you a working example. They give you a working example on what could be an evidence on what you will have to prove to claim prior use. Okay, Mauro, go to the next one, please.
Here we are.
Is there any standard or technical report or any regulated guideline that confirm what are the minimum specific checklists to consider the apparatus or the, let's say, the equipment to be considered to be proven in use? Okay, Mauro, go next. Well, again, for prior use, we had in the 61511, we mentioned them all already. because here I can give you a few more. There are even more, but I thought let me first focus on those we already have been giving, because the standard is referring to the first bullet, the first two bullets, report 4 of the ISA, which is today also under review, because they're going to rewrite it based on the edition 2 of the IEC 61511. It used to be called the ISA 8401, but now it's called the ISA 61511. So they take the same 61511 as we have done in the IEC standards here in the European version. Namur NE 130, for those who are part of the chemical industry, I would highly recommend, if not already, you are part of the Namur end users group, and there you have access to all those good guidance. They also give you guidance on how to do your proof test, let's say estimates, coverage, etc. And as I just mentioned, that's a new document which I'm giving you the link on the previous slide. Proven in use, that's more for the manufacturers. Proven in use, because I was not sure the question was a mix on prior use or proven in use. And for proven use for the manufacturers, those are the references coming from the 61508 with data quality collections that the manufacturers are supposed to collect. Okay, Mauro?
Okay, now we have the second last question.
A partial stroke device can be certified as SIL3 based on prior to use criteria. Okay, well, I can only assume that this question is coming from a manufacturer who is selling partial stroke, or potentially a actuator, or maybe part of the valve or whatever. So I try to be neutral here, because I'm not helping any manufacturer, or I'm not against any solution here. So I'm trying to be neutral, which is, people who knows me, is sometimes a challenge. So have to bite my lip. So everything is possible nowadays. And I think this is typically one of my, let's say, neutral answers. I've seen everything. I mean, the sky is the limit. Everything is possible. The question is based on what evidence, what do you believe, what do you trust, or what would you rely on to claim safety? And again, this is me being a safety nerd as an engineer. And clearly, I don't trust anything. Anything which is shown to me, I'm trying to challenge. Whoever shows me something, prove to me that statement on paper, where does that come from? And I give you, I'm not going to open my mouth here on partial stroke and what is good, what is bad. I mean, you're old enough, most likely, to find this out yourself. But let me reframe this into a business that every one of you that ever has been on an aircraft may actually understand. Assume that you board an aircraft and the captain, who is a very experienced captain with many flying hours, is telling you, you know what, during mid-air, I have to go in my sleeping pose and I will go to sleep. And there will be a second pilot taking over the flight in mid-air. And the pilot has been trained to actually go from, let's say, from 10 kilometers high into 8 kilometers height and back. So that means the pilot that will take over control is a perfect trained person or pilot to actually go descend and climb again. But he will only go in that stroke. So it's the same as a partial stroke. And I can tell you now, the pilot is error-free. He will do exactly as you want. The question is, what would happen if the pilot that needs to land the plane will get a heart stroke, will die during the sleep? Will this pilot who never landed the plane be able to land? And that's something you may answer yourself the question, what does partial stroke bring for me if I have to land the plane in terms of emergency? Would you board the plane with your family to go on holiday, providing there is no COVID and you are allowed to fly? That is the question that I would like to ask you. So assume that the question is correct, defined as prior use. Then this would be purely an end user evidence question. How will an end user prove that if this would be correct question on prior use? Or is this here a manufacturer trying to sound prior use that actually meant proven use? That's, of course, again, the subjectivity. Finally, keep things simple. The entire idea behind SIL X is to express the reliability, availability of a safety function, and so predicts how much risk reduction you can achieve. The question is, how will you prove this evidence if you are able to prove it? All right, Maru, I think I need to go
Last
next.
question.
And that's the last question, Maru?
This is the last question. Then we have the last poll, but it will be short. Yeah, right. This is the last technical question, let me say.
Okay. Sorry, so you were waiting for me, sorry. What is your recommendation to users, integrators towards the battles of lambdas? Do you see progress in the prior use approach in the traditional process industry? There are again two different camps in this question, but okay, let me see what I answered. I actually forgot what I answered. Okay, so let's first start with the battle of lambdas is a theoretical approach and investigation to come to a predicted failure data based on conditional test and industrial database for components. Okay, how did I tackle this answer? Let me think about that. Okay, the battle of lambdas, I think you mean the failure data lambdas, which is actually on either a test report or maybe on the, let's say, the certificates. Now, you need to think about the following. Those FMEDA experts, let's say accreditation specialized companies, they cannot just put a number on a component failure. They have to come out of some well-known databases. And the very good old known databases, the very old ones were the Siemens norm, that's the SN 29500 series. That is the first or the second one that I have here in my brackets. But today, I mean the 2021, and this started about, let's say, 2000 and probably 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in that area. That is where they started to use the IEC 62380, if I remember well, because the IEC 62380 was around 2010 with the edition 2 of the standard 61508. Most, let's say, accreditation, the more, let's say, optimistic approach will certainly go into the 62380 database. And if you would do the same FMEA, and you would take a database from one or from a second, or maybe from the military handbook 217, well, I can tell you now that most likely the lambdas could even have a magnitude different, could even be somewhere in a different SIL. In other words, the source code where the lambdas have been based on, or where the failure data on the FMEA can be based on, can give you different numbers. And that's how I would like to answer that. So, of course, the battle, there is a certain battle or there is a certain subjectivity. It all depends where they come from. And I cannot compare eggs with bananas with oranges. They're all fruit. You can all eat them, maybe. Well, eggs are not fruit, maybe. That's a very good one. Let's say apples. Let's put it in bananas, apples, and oranges. Then they're all fruit, so you can all eat them. But they all belong to the same family of fruit, but they all may have different origins on where the data came from. Prior use and end user operating companies, it's highly recommended with edition 2 to collect your own failure data. Because the question is, if you have a valve and you have not used the valve for maybe the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, how will you prove failure data? And then, unfortunately, the gap between what we think we know today and what we believe is good versus the unknown, to be polite here or to be politically correct, I would say is still very huge today. There is certainly room for improvement, and be aware, edition 3 is very close to come into a certain shape to be released. That's going to be the IEC 61508, which may be another webinar in the future. Okay, Mauro, I'm finished.
Okay. Yeah, also we have finished with the question and answer, and but we have a very last question for all participants. We would like to have your feedback, and in the meantime, let me remind to all of you to follow us at our website, where you will see a list of further webinars on different subjects. as well as you can see the schedule of our training. As mentioned, we are running functional safety training. Very soon we will introduce also security training on the web with dates, as well as training on intrinsic safety. All of them are based on a program. When we talk about functional safety and security, it's a TUV Ryland program, as Tino was mentioning. So follow us there. As said, you will receive the presentation on PDF. You have the chance to see on a YouTube channel the presentation, this and the previous one. And thank you very much to all of you. I saw just people who started finished with us today. So the subject was very, very interesting. Thank you very much, Tino. And yeah, you will have say the presentation, and you will see our contact details. So feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you very much again, and see you next time to the next webinar.
Okay, all right. Thank you also from my side. Stay safe, stay healthy, and end of March going to be a new webinar on security risk assessment. We're going to have one of the security specialists running the webinar, British native speaker, so his English will be better than mine for those who struggle with my accent. But this is for end of March, so it's already on the schedule of the webinars on GMI. Okay, Mauro, would you stop sharing this?
Stop sharing.
And you're still here, and then we end. Thank you for the comments given by the person on the questions. Thank you for the comments. We always try to do our best and try to stay as neutral as possible. Participants are still in there, so we say stop sharing, and then do this, close that. Okay, Mauro.
Okay, thank you, Tino. See you next time.
Thank you, Mauro. We speak
and thanks
soon.
To all again. Bye bye.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye bye.